We've got, boom, RobWords. This is a little bit of on a linguistic type, and he's giving us the origins of every English city's name. I am very excited to watch this together with you so we can discuss a little bit. I've only reacted to one of his videos before, and it was really well made. Of course, I'm not going to react to the entire video. We'll just watch a few sections, and then as always, I'll encourage people to check it out. Let's see what he can teach us, and let's have some fun. Let's see what we can learn from him.
Right, the origin of every English city's name. There are 55 of them. It's quite a lot. So let's get cracking. Welcome.
Let's get cracking.
To another RobWords. First, some quick context.
Yes. England's
place names are a product of England's history. They've been influenced by, in order, the
Oh, I love this graphics. Look, what he said, of course, applies to every nation, but then I appreciate that he's this. So do we have Celtic Britons, absolutely, Romans, glory to Rome, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, and Normans. Yeah.
Celtic Britons, who are around from the Iron Age, the Romans, who spent a few centuries there, the Anglo-Saxons, who came after them, the Vikings, who took control of a massive chunk of England,
Yeah.
and then William the Conqueror's Normans. Throw in some,
Of course, after 1066, Battle of Hastings. Wonderful so far.
Christianity and a millennium of lazy pronunciation and mishearings, and you get to the place names we have today.
You know what? When it comes to pronunciation and mishearings and misunderstandings, this applies to a lot of other countries and the way we pronounce. Like, for instance, let me give you two examples when it comes to Mandarin Chinese. The way we pronounce cities in Mandarin is really influenced by sometimes misunderstandings and older pronunciations. Like now, you know, in English, we used to say Peking, which used to be at one point the name of the city of Beijing. Now I believe Beijing is the more correct and more used pronunciation even in English. Correct me if I'm wrong, and of course Beijing in Chinese, in Mandarin. But when it comes to other cities like Hong Kong, for instance, it's actually modeled after Cantonese. I can't pronounce Cantonese, but in Mandarin it would be pronounced Xianggang. So completely different if you think about it. And then the area of Canton, we usually in English mean the city, that in Mandarin is Guangzhou, but Guangdong is actually the region. So in reality, Canton should be the region. That's what they told me at university. I left to double check it because it's been many years. I know that that's what the professor said. It's just now I don't trust any professor nor academic a priori. So to take this with a pinch of salt. But I was told that that was because the early Europeans that reached that area and talked to the natives there, the Chinese people, they asked them, where are we? And the people said the name of the region. So they said the equivalent in Cantonese for the word that we now use that the Europeans heard as Canton. But then they thought it meant the city, the Europeans, and instead the region, the people were talking about the region. It would be a bit like someone asking me, where are we? And I would tell them Sicily, but they think that's the name of Palermo.
Now we're just going to look at the cities because we'd be here all day otherwise.
Yeah.
Contrary to popular belief, there are no specific criteria for a place in England to be designated a city. It is...
Oh, nice. So he's going to debunk the idea of like if it has a university and a cathedral. I heard people using that maybe in some periods, but I think he's correct. I don't think there is a criteria.
Just that at some point,
criterium.
The monarch has to have decided that it is. None of this, it has to have a cathedral or a university.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
I knew it. And I love the usage of the word nonsense. It's like my favorite word.
They're of all shapes and sizes. So with which city do we start? Well, how about the city of London?
London. Where is he from, by the way?
Not only is London our nation's capital, but it is also potentially one of the oldest and most mysterious place names that we have. The
Londinium, yeah.
earliest known name for London is what the Romans called it, Londinium, but we have no idea what that means or where it came from.
Yeah, interestingly enough, in English, of course, you would read it Londinium, but if you want to read it in classical Latin, it would be Londinium. Londinium. So the U is a U and the M is fully nasalized. No phonemic vowel length difference. Every vowel is short.
Romans liked to adapt the existing names of places rather than come up with new ones, but historians haven't been able to make any Celtic words fit.
Actually, that's correct. Even the city of Paris, Parisi, was the original name, although then in that case, the Roman actually renamed it to Lutetia, which I think sounds really good, even though the meaning is not great. It's like marshes. But yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they rename them, but other times they do take like a word and kind of Latinize it.
Could it be from this, meaning marsh with a fort?
And more marshes appears.
There's no evidence of a fort. Could it be from this, meaning fast-flowing river? Maybe, but
Cool.
it's a bit of a leap, isn't it? So historians think the name could come from even before the Celts, from a language we know nothing about.
I love that. That's like true mysteries. Yeah.
That's great, but now I have to give you one that we can explain. Don't I?
World of Warcraft indeed.
Right, so let's go with the presidential sounding Lincoln, a city whose
Lincoln.
cathedral was once the tallest structure in the entire world. Its name is a Celtic-Roman hybrid. The Celts named it Lindon, no relation to London, using their word for pool, and the Romans called it Lindum Colonia after...
Yes, of course, because it's a, I do want to make a video on what exactly a colonia is. I think that would be very interesting to discuss, like when it becomes a city, when it, urbes, and all that kind of situation, and discuss colonia. That would be nice. We'll do it.
They built a colonia there, a kind of retirement village for soldiers. Through a few centuries of laziness and mumbling, you get from that to Lincoln.
Oh, goodness gracious, that is a lot of laziness and mumbling, my friend.
One of the theories behind how Colchester got its name is from one of those Roman colonia stuffed with ex-legionaries. It looks like it's named after the river Colne, which in turn might be named after a colonia, although
This is an awesome video.
some historians reckon that Colne is actually Celtic because it pops up in other names in other parts of the country. Now, the Chester in Colchester is the bit we really need to talk about because the story behind it is surprisingly surprising.
Oh, that's good, because usually cities that finish with Chester are connected to the Roman castra. I'll tell you a little more. I'll tell you a little fun fact about that word, by the way, in a second, but I don't want to keep interrupting the host, the man himself.
At first glance, it seems simple. The Romans built a fort there, and their word for fortification was castrum. So
Exactly, but that is a horrible helmet. Like, I like you very much. I do not like, however, the helmet you chose. So, if you need pictures of helmets or anything Roman that is historically accurate, do contact me, my friend, and I will send you anything you want. Anything. I'll put on my armor for you. Like, you tell me, hey, Metatron, can you making sure that you hide your barbaric hair? Can you make sure you do like a shot for me? And I'll do it for free. You don't need to do not even a mention. Not even a mention. It's fine. This is a terrible helmet. Like, it's one of those, like, this is too thick, this is too big, this is too... whatever, it's fine.
So, they slammed that on the end of the name. Easy. But nope. Yes, the Chester comes from the Latin for fort, but the Romans did not put it there. It was the Anglo-Saxons who put the Chester in Colchester to say, hey, that's where the Romans were. And the same goes for...
Man, this guy's good. Like, his research. I love that. So let's talk about that word. And let me give you that little fun fact. You know how you must have heard sometimes that, castrum is singular, right? And then castra is plural. That's usually how you look at it. But at other times, depending on what you read, you will see, and the Romans built a castra here. I don't know if you heard that. In that case, then castra sounds singular. And you must have seen castra, castrorum. So which one is it? And the reality is that most likely in older Latin, they would use the castrum, castra, in which singular, plural, castra would become plural. But then castra, in time, it sort of had a linguistic evolution of sort, a shift, whereby it actually became the word for the singular. They started just call it a castra in singular. And so when they needed to specify plural, they had to create the other suffix and go into castra, castrorum. Just a little fun fact.
Every Chester, Castor, and Cester in the country.
Yeah.
So let's tick off some more cities. You've got
Please.
Chichester, which is probably named after an Anglo-Saxon called
That sounds so
Cissa.
English.
Winchester, with the win,
Chichester.
thought to come from a Celtic word for a meeting place.
Oh, that's really good. Chichester, want to get a couple of chippies? Let's go to Chichester.
Pronounced Wenter by the Romans. Manchester is potentially named after a breast-shaped hill, meaning it's related to the words mammal and mama rather than man. The Romans called it Mancunium, hence the local
Yeah, that's right.
are still called Mancunians.
True,
And then
Mancunians is how you say Mancunians, yeah. And then people in Liverpool usually refer to them as Scousers because they eat the scouse. Birmingham, Broomies. London is Londoner, unless you are specifically from the East End, then you are a Cockney. But to be really pedantic, a Cockney, to be a true Cockney, you need to be born within the sound of the bells of Is it Saint? Can't remember. It's been too many years. Goodness gracious. Saint something church. To be a true Cockney.
Chester, which is frankly just cheating. It was a Roman fort like the rest of them, but has resisted attempts to differentiate it with something extra at the start. The names Leicester, Legion Chester, and Westchester.
Look at how the G is G, because of course in modern English, legion is a J sound, and that's the same in Italian, legione. But in classical Latin, because in ecclesiastical Latin, you do that because it's more modern, and so you would say legionis, legionarius, but it's legionis, legionarius. So legionarius with a G sound is the original classical Latin, possibly where this G sound is a conservative sound.
Etymologically identical to the Chesters are the Casters.
Yep.
Lancaster was the fort by the river Lune, in turn thought to come from a word meaning healthy or pure. Doncaster is at the river Don. Don is just a Celtic word for river, so it's literally the river, as are the various river.
Why river though? Why not river castrum, like river? Oh, I see what you mean. Like when you say the river Don, you're saying the river makes sense.
The Avons, also Celtic, and river Ouzes. Exeter is another caster on a river, which used to be this mouthful before it passed through the laziness.
Wait. Escancester. Oh my gosh.
Filter. It's named after the river Exe, which again probably just means river. Specifically,
No, it means it's an executable. You can double click it.
A river replete with fish. More on rivers to come, and also bridges.
Let me say this about fish, because I'm always people keep correcting me, and I need to say it once and for all so you can take it off my chest. Fish, singular, plural, fish, or also acceptable, fishes, if there are different species on the same freaking table, or in the same lake, or in your hands. Like I'm so sick of people every time I say there are 3 fishes. No, it's fish. Haha, you don't even know that. No, because they're 3 different species, so it's correct to say fishes in that case. I might do a few more rants when it comes to corrections that shouldn't be there.
Because there is a lot of crossover, pun intended. But first, the final Roman forts, the cesters, not a single one of which is pronounced like it's spelt. We do it to confuse tourists.
We appreciate that. Yeah, never mind that. How about the city of, what's a weird one? Derby. Everyone who isn't from England will say Derby, because it is spelled D-E-R-B-Y. So it's like you will say Derby, but it's Derby. So like, why don't you spell it with an A then?
Cirencester stays true to its roots, but it is not a city.
No.
So we're not interested.
How dare they?
But we are interested in Leicester. It's named after a Celtic tribe.
Is that how you read it? Leicester?
And to the Anglo-Saxons was Ligere Ceastre. You can actually see a version of that on this super old map. But bit by bit, we shed those tiresome syllables, in pronunciation anyway. Speech didn't match spelling because, most people couldn't read. To the west, saucy little Worcester is named after the Weagora tribe, and the southern city of Gloucester was the fort at Glaive, thought to maybe come from a Celtic word for glow. So with all those cesters, casters and chesters...
Maybe it was glowing because of all the spirits and the souls living bodies and turning into... Okay, never mind.
Anglo-Saxons gave a nod to the Romans who'd come before them, but almost everywhere else they named or renamed using their own language, Old English, and they are responsible for the vast majority of the place names that we have today.
Hey, the Romans don't matter. Remember, capital.
Among them, Norwich, which is the North Wich being an Anglo-Saxon word for a settlement or village. It gives us the wick.
Yeah, but North Wich meaning the witch would have been so much cooler. Like, this is cool, but imagine that. Where are you from? From the place where the North Wich resides.
Place names too. The northernness of Norwich is likely in comparison to their fellow East Anglians down in Ipswich, which isn't a city, and I bet they're a bit annoyed about it. East Anglia...
Ipswich? What a name! Ipswich!
Is, of course, so called because the Angles were there. Another Anglo-Saxon pairing are Northampton and Southampton, but this time it is the southern settlement that is actually a city. Southampton was originally actually another witch, but it changed from Hamwich to Hamtun. In this case,
Now that he said ham, I'm hungry. I actually have some cold cuts over there in the fridge because I got a fridge in my office. Smart man. So I don't have to wake my wife up with the alarm system every time I go downstairs and enter the kitchen. You know what? Of course they do for you.
Comes from the Old English for an enclosure, probably the same root as when we say something is hemmed in fact. We'll talk about a different Anglo-Saxon ham a bit later. But anyway,
we'll talk about all sorts of hams, including like Italian hams, you know, roasted. You can have honey roasted if you want. I know in America those are very popular. Raw ham, it's really nice when you pair it with, for instance, cantaloupe.
Hun, or tun, refers to a farmstead or village. Eventually it becomes our town.
You know what I think? I think this man's actual vocabulary is in the tens of thousands. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy like swallowed a dictionary whole.
Up in West Yorkshire, Wakefield shows off another Anglo-Saxon suffix. Field meant, we'll have a guess. Yes, field.
Thank you.
And a wake was a kind of medieval village festival. So
yep,
despite sounding somewhat funereal, Wakefield is actually a fun, festive name related to fairs. Another city with an Anglo-Saxon name is Stoke-on-Trent. The River Trent is just referenced to differentiate it from various other Stokes.
Man, this is incredible. What other cities have we got? Let me see. Okay, we got to do Cambridge and Oxford, and then we'll stop with the React. As you know, that's the way I do my React, so that I encourage people to click. They see the presentation, they love it, and then they go finish it, watch all of these other 1,500 sections. Goodness gracious, it did like how many cities did it do? Well, York is one you don't want to miss, I don't think. But let's see Cambridge.
Now, I said we'd cross this bridge when we got to it, and that is the Bridge, because Cambridge is so called because there was a river crossing there. It was originally called Granta Bridge because it was on the River Granta. However, it appears that the Normans struggled to pronounce that with their fancy French mouths, so it morphed into Cambridge or Cambridge.
Man, how did they get to that? That's insane. We'll have to double check it from the perspective of Norman French, which of course is different from not only modern French, but Parisian French, even in period. I do believe they would be rolling their R's at that time, in fact, like us Italians. Could you imagine that? French with a rolled R? Be nice.
Then, rather ridiculously, the name of the river was changed to fit. So the river running through Cambridge is now called the Cam, although at some other points it is still the Granta.
And because English is such a crazy language, it's the Cam, but you don't say Cambridge, you say Cambridge, because of course.
Granta. Cambridge's university rivals in Oxford can also pin their place name on a passing river. Ford is a...
Yeah, because a ford, yeah, of course. So a ford is kind of a shallow river, I think. But what's interesting is, if you notice in the pronunciation of he's native, clearly, when the word is on its own, in isolation, he pronounces it ford with a full extension of the fully pronounced vowel. But when he puts it together with ox and they are conjuncted, he says Oxford. Notice that next time you hear him, it's Oxford, fed. It's a sort of impoverished vowel, and this happens a lot in English, and it's one of the characteristics that distinguish a foreign accent, because you will say, in a foreign way, you'll say Oxford, but it's Oxford, at least in an English accent. But I think even in an American accent, not that I can do it well, but Oxford. Yeah, it's still not a full vowel, is it?
Really common Anglo-Saxon suffix, meaning, well, ford. It's a place where you can get across a river, often because it's shallow enough.
Exactly, so I was right, it's shallow, good.
Oxford is where you could easily lead oxen over the river.
Could you imagine that? Like the fancy universities, just a bunch of oxen crossing the ford. It's wonderful, I hope that humbles them a little bit. RobWords is great. We'll give him a like for the video, and the reason why you don't see me subscribe is because I'm now connected with my third channel, but I am subscribed in my other channel. Very cool. Hard to ford a fjord. That's a good one.